So we can go ahead and move on to some of the players now. And we've been talking about this last night. We did a little bit of sort of homework on this to try to figure out basically who we think are going to be sort of the underrated players in this draft, and then also who we think may be some of the biggest wild cards. And actually, I guess we should go ahead and mention we did have a couple last-minute ads. We had Failsauce get added to the player list just now at $711. We also had Xenos and Element both get added. I want to say in the mid 500s it was, and so that's not going to affect, I don't think, any of our sort of work that we've got going into this. But I do think Failsauce he's going to be on my list. I added him to my best available flag runners, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, we're going to go with our biggest steals of this draft, the potential underrated players that we think can make a difference, sleepers, if you will. And so I've got that popped up right there. And so there you see the list. For you, you've got, or I'll just go down my list and you can go down yours. So I'm going to start with the only real high-ranking player. I'm kind of going the opposite side of you. I sort of started at the bottom of the list and looking at players that are dirt cheap, that you can pretty much pick up for free as your last pick, but that may be able to make a difference. However, the one player that I was going to mention, I wanted to get one from the top of the list, was going to be Ganja. I think he was ranked as low as he was, in large part due to uncertainty about his activity, and then also just due to supply and demand. He's one of those sort of cover players that relies on fragging ability and being in the right place at the right time, but with a lot of players having a high fragging level now, there's sort of a sense that position can sort of be plugged and played with a lot of people. However, I do think that Ganja, on my list, I think he should have been a little bit higher than he is, and so I think you may see him get picked up and outperform his salary. But moving on down the list from there, like I say, I was kind of picking the low end of the salary range here. You're looking at Darth, Hector, what is that, Phils? I've played with him a couple of times. I don't even know how to pronounce it. And Banco. And so you had Hector, who I actually plugged with the other day, and I think he was one of those players that there was kind of some question marks about whether he would have those natural capture the flag instincts to be in the right spot at the right time. And I think everyone knew he could sort of frag, but he actually surprised me with how often he was in the right spot. I don't know if his time zone, if I recall, he's European, right?
I'm not even sure, but I do remember seeing him play a few pugs a couple months ago anyway, and he definitely surprised. I hadn't seen him before.
Yeah, he's coming in at a really low price, so I'm thinking he may be one of the steals of the draft. Darth actually showed up in a pug the other day. I believe he's a UT1 player, and so I had never played with him. Same situation. You bring guys in from other games, from other game types, and sure, you can aim or shock rifle, but are they going to know how to trans? Are they going to know the maps? Are they going to know how to handle transitions, especially, and when to go turn around and cover the flag carrier versus trying to cut off, and how are they going to be in position? And for one of the cheapest players in the draft, I think Darth has the potential to sneak into someone's roster towards the end and really get some playing time. And same thing too with I think Banco, if I'm not mistaken, was from the Global Unreal community, and I think saw the post on there and jumped in, and he did a competent job in some of the pugs that I played with him. And then Phils, of course, I think he might be he might be a TAM player or something, but anyway, he jumps into pugs from time to time, and he slipped way down the list based on his fragging ability.
Yeah, and I guess they're saying there that Hector's Hungarian, so I didn't know that. But...
See, I don't know if his time zone's going to be an issue there. I mean, anytime you've got Europeans playing in here and you're trying to figure out the scheduling, it's a little bit of a wild card, but we'll get into those later. But at the very least, you've got someone, if you can pick them up for such a cheap price tag, it's not a huge risk there.
Yeah, definitely some of those. It looked like, you started kind of at the bottom. I started kind of higher on the list, but definitely some of those you have there, if they end up free agents for whatever reason, they'll be good pickups if people need them and they're reliable. But as far as mine go, I was just kind of looking down the list. I remember No Aim No Moves just being a really good defensive player, and if he shows up and doesn't disappoint as per usual, I think he's actually ranked a little bit lower than I would have expected. I also have Kuzki on there. He's actually been running a lot of offense lately, and he, if I'm not mistaken, came from TDM not even that long ago. So he really has been a surprise and been playing really well.
Yeah, I can personally attest, Kuzki hated the translocator until UT3. That's when he finally came around to it, and it kind of clicked with him. So he never really played Capture the Flag a whole lot. He kind of rung with Notorious and Scrims in 2k4, but even back then he despised the trans. He was one of those guys. Once we hit UT3, it finally clicked with him. So relative newcomer to that
Yeah.
transition.
Yep. And so then a couple other people recently, like I've seen MWalt play a few pugs recently. I know he hadn't even played since the last MLUT, but from what I was told, I didn't personally play in the last MLUT, but apparently he played some damn good D. So I'm thinking that he could definitely be a surprise. And at 594, that's not that bad of a price for that. Another person, Cashel, who's really a true offensive flag running. At least that's how I remember him from several years ago. Ranked at 496. So I mean, if he comes back and does that piston running that he used to, then I think he could be a big surprise. And then my last one was Infamous Raider at $482. Saw him playing some defense recently. Was playing pretty well. So I think those are my sleepers for this year.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Nanum. I know no aim, no moves. I actually have him on my wild cards list for the exact same reasons, which is if he shows up, if he decides that he wants to play, he can be very effective. But I have no contact with the guy. I have no idea if that's going to happen or not. But we'll get into the question marks later. Running down your sleepers list, I mean, yeah, of course we covered Kuzki. Like I said, I think he's one of those deals. Same thing as Ganja in that they got ranked a little lower, maybe than their skill level, based on the perception of supply and demand, which is simply that there's a lot of folks in this draft that can shoot guns. But I think there's a lot of intangibles that go with being a good offensive cover player, and I think it's really hard to learn and it's really hard to measure. But it's really just being in the right place at the right time, and it's hard for captains to tell that unless they played alongside someone. Then of course you got MWalt. Minigun never goes out of style, especially now that we're playing a lot of maps where you're not gonna be grabbing the flag necessarily with a full array of armor and keg. There's a lot more smaller maps where you're coming in with low health, and I think minigun horse can be very effective right now. Casual, of course, grabbing the flag never goes out of style as well. We talked about it last night. I actually think that we talk about supply and demand. There's a lack of, I don't know, you might call it hardcore flag runners right now in the game. I think there's so many people who can frag right now, but there's not that many who are sort of committed to the lost art of just running the flag and being a very aggressive sort of point man in that regard. And I think if Casual could come back and be that, he can definitely outplay his salary based on how valuable that can be to a team. Because not every team in this draft is going to have a guy who has those instincts and has run the flag very aggressively for years. You're going to have a lot of people trying to step into that role.
He's definitely one of those guys that I think he'll if you need him to be, he'll be that guy that will just grab and grab and grab. And that can be very effective in this game. So,
yeah, an Infamous Raider I can't really comment on. I actually posted a screenshot earlier tonight. I randomly found that I'd played from a 2002 or 2003 Instagib pub that he was in, and so that's I think probably the last time I played with that guy. So I can't really comment too much on him. But if you've seen him play, then that's why he makes your list, and we'll see what happens with that. So there's your sleepers from us. We already talked about it a little bit. We're gonna hurry up a little bit here and go up to our wild cards now. And originally we were calling these question marks, but I really don't think I think wild card is more appropriate because these aren't just people that we don't know about. They're people that can make a big difference depending on what happens. And you've got 6 on your list because you cheated, but I've got 5 on mine. So I'll go ahead and run down mine. I've got Nell, Rookie, Nanum, Chowie, and Vengeance. I'll start with Nell. One of the best defenders in the game right now. Has some scheduling issues. He posted them on the forums. It's not a big secret. Whether or not teams are going to be able or be willing to schedule around that is going to be a really big sort of changing factor in how well his team goes and really how the season looks, because you're talking about probably a top 5, based on most people's perception, probably a top 5 defender either being available for matches or not. And so he's got a pretty good price tag on him, and so he's a bit of a risk. But the question becomes, can captains afford not to pick him and then have him show up for another team? Can you give up one of the top defenders and then have him show up, for the other team? So we'll see what happens there. Rookie, of course, was one of the better defenders. I believe he was a champion from the last MLUT, right?
yes, I believe that's correct.
So I haven't seen him around, but certainly he signed up, and so you have to give him a little bit of respect for that. But of course, the wild card here is he around? Is he active? I don't know. There's a lot of captains that have probably been running around trying to get in touch with a lot of these folks, and they may have more insight than I do. But right now, that's why he's on my list. Nanum, the same reason we just covered. If he shows up, he can be effective. Will he show up? Will he be one of those guys who's interested or not based on who picks him up and what his teammates are? I don't really know. I don't know the guy. but I know I haven't seen him pug anytime recently, so he's kind of one of those like magicians. He'll either pop out of nowhere and be effective, or he'll just stay in the darkness. Chowie's the same way. Chowie's on my list because of course, I haven't seen him play in years, but of course, he was one of the best defenders in the game when he did play. So if he decides to show up and he shakes off the rust, he can be a huge game changer. Then of course you've got Vengeance on the list, who has been an IRC the last day or two, but then of course, will he find a team he can mesh with? Will he decide to play? He's not ranked super high. He has a very palatable salary if he shows up and plays up to his potential, but will he? And there you go.
I think he's definitely one of those players that if he comes back and kind of like Nanum there, if he comes back and just plays how he can, then he can definitely be very good. By the way, I didn't know if we wanted to show or if you wanted to stream any of that pug going on for any of the viewers. I can get through my list here really quickly if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead and get through your list.
Some people were asking about it, so.
Let me see what I can pop up here.
Right on. Here's my biggest wild cards. And most of these is just because of scheduling and what I've seen on the MLUT site. Obviously, Nell, for the reason that we had talked about. Danny, I've heard that, he's working on some stuff right now, so he may or may not even be able to play matches, kind of like Nell's situation. DC's a great defense, but availability on the MLUT site said Sunday, so that's really the only reason why I was kind of worried if Sunday's his only day you can play matches, then teams may not want to pick him up, or they may, depending on how they want to schedule it out. B-Banks as well. I just haven't seen him in a few weeks. He's really the only reason why I had him on my wild card here. He's a very consistent player, really good flag runner / offensive cover, but he just hasn't been around, so I wasn't really sure. Same with Dark Virus, really good defense, can hold down D really well, but I haven't seen him in several weeks now, so that was really the reason for that. And then Chowie, for the same reason as everybody else that I've said here. Great player, great defender, but will he show up and will he be playing? I haven't seen him bugging, so we will see.
Yeah, Chowie's actually the only one that we have on both of our lists, but let's see.
Well, yeah, Chowie and Nell anyway.
Oh yeah, there you go. And again, for the same reasons, I do think that some of these guys like DC B-Banks and Dark Virus, well, especially B-Banks and Dark Virus, like you see them play, and they'll play for a good week, and then they'll kind of disappear, and then they'll come back, and then they'll disappear, and you wonder whether they're going to be in the, which part of that cycle they're going to be in once these games start. All right, well, if you want to hop in the community server, looks like we're going to play a game here, and looks like everybody's going to sort of get one last map in before the draft. So if they're going to do that, I mean, might as well cast it.